Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to talk some Kyrie Irving, the probably the most mercurial point guard in the NBA, but we'll get to that. But before we do, you know what time it is. If you haven't already and you're here on YouTube, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be made aware whenever new content drops on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, you know what to do. Open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come up after a little search. Go ahead, make sure you subscribe right there. If you enjoy the content, give us that 5-star review. Make sure you share it with other sports fans who might want to hear a different voice. Always looking to do that, not necessarily parrot and repeat the same stuff you may hear on all the other sports shows. You know what happens when you do those things. We rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Okay, so Mark Cuban is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and clearly he is a billionaire. And that would lead you to believe that he makes smart business moves. Now, I'm not saying that billionaires or millionaires never make a bad business decision, but part of that is how they overcome those decisions and move on to have success in the future. But in general, you would believe that someone who has that kind of money makes smart business moves. However, I don't get this one. Last year, we saw the Dallas Mavericks trade with the Brooklyn Nets to acquire point guard Kyrie Irving. I didn't get that when they did it. I didn't think it was a good fit, but we'll get there. But Kyrie Irving, as we know, he's a real different cat, right? Now, as you know, I'm not a guy who gives too much credence to the off-court stuff when I'm looking at a basketball player as a player. But just so you know, I can demonstrate that I don't have any personal animus or ill will towards Kyrie Irving. I will say it's been well documented that this is a good guy in the community. He cares about people. He does things on the other side of the world. He does things right here in the United States. So, you know, it definitely gets love from me for that. Definitely, you know, he's a guy who tries to help people where he can. So there's that. Now, on the basketball court, he is arguably one of the most skilled guys in the NBA in terms of being a 3-level scorer and having a total offensive package. Quick note, people always talk about a lot of people have Kyrie Irving as having the best handles in NBA history. Totally disagree with that because he carries the basketball so much. Now, with that said, the modern NBA, they allow guys to carry, but still, if what you're doing is built so much on a violation, you don't ever get to be the quote unquote GOAT. And when I say GOAT, I mean the GOAT of ball handling. That's just, I don't believe that. Personally, I think Isaiah Thomas the best ball handler of all time because he was doing all of what he was doing. It didn't look like what guys are doing now, but he was doing it without carrying the basketball. And, you know, so there's that. Anyway, back to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, he's a real different dude, right? Obviously, he is on his 4th NBA team at this point. Started out, I think he was #1 overall draft pick out of Duke. Yes, out of Duke. And he played for Cleveland. And until LeBron James got there, he was getting his numbers. But a lot of guys aren't leaders, right? He was getting his numbers, but Cleveland was still terrible. And realistically, in fairness, it's very difficult for a small guard to lead a team and have elite level success. So no one's blaming him for not doing that, but just in general, he was getting his numbers, but Cleveland wasn't a very good team. LeBron James comes back 4 straight trips to the NBA Finals with Kyrie. And of course, Kyrie saves him in 2016, hits the biggest shot, arguably in NBA history, to help upset the regular season record-setting Golden State Warriors. So there's that. Now, obviously, playing with LeBron can be a strain. We know that. We've talked about it ad nauseum. You're going to have an opportunity to win. However, you know, he's pulling all the strings. When things don't go right, you will face the blame. And when you do your part to help him have success, you will get no credit. So that's just one of those things. Eventually, that kind of wore thin, and Kyrie decided that he wanted out of Cleveland. But I'm not going to blame it all on LeBron because it wasn't all his fault. And I mentioned Kyrie is kind of an odd dude. It was reported after he left there that there were times he would go weeks without speaking to teammates. Like, I don't know how you do that. I guess he would come in, say what he got to say on the court, but other than that, no interaction with anybody, which is really not cool, right? Team sports is one of those things that you generally really bond with people. You go through the struggles with them, you go through the successes with them. So high level team sports really help people to come together. So it's really odd to me to hear that he would go weeks at a time without speaking to teammates. Again, that speaks to his, I'm just going to use the word odd kind of personality. Then When he asks out of Cleveland, he wants to get traded. He goes to Boston, and Boston, he ended up getting injured there, and the Celtics ended up demonstrating that they were better without him. He does the whole thing that, if you'll have me back, I would love to resign here. And then he ends up drawing back from that. It was a whole weird situation. There's stuff that was reported that he wasn't great in that locker room either. Now you're starting to see a trend, right? Not great in the locker room. He eventually, I think he didn't get traded, but he went and signed with the Brooklyn Nets in free agency. I think 4 years, $137 million, linked up with Kevin Durant. And that was supposed to be a really big time and elite team. Links up with Kevin Durant, and then they get James Harden out of Houston. So that was supposed to be a dominant big three. And for a little while it was, but then you started seeing Kyrie exhibiting more issues, in the wake of the George Floyd murder. You start seeing him having issues with, obviously, the state of our criminal justice system and social justice in this country. And that made him decide that he needed to take some time off from basketball. Obviously he being hurt. And I'm not trying to take away from him the fact that was a difficult time for him mentally as an African-American in this country. It was tough for all of us. But at the same time, you got to understand that basketball is what allows you to have the platform you have and do the things you do and live the life you like, right? The life you live. And that's one thing I will always give credit to LeBron James for. Keep the main thing, right? So anyway, there's that. And then, of course, he retweets the link to a book on Amazon that reportedly had a great deal of anti-Semitic tropes, et cetera, gets in trouble, suspended for that. So you've got those issues in Brooklyn, and eventually he's deciding, hey, listen, he wants the 4-year Supermax extension in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn, rightfully so, is not willing to give it to him because they're like, hey, we've had a lot of issues here. You got to show us some more. We'll work with you, but you got to show us some more that you can basically behave yourself and do the right thing and be reliable for us physically and mentally. And we will, we'll give you what you need down the line, but you got to show us, you got to prove it first. And when Brooklyn balked at that, he said, hey, trade me. Okay, so this is 3 teams now where Kyrie Irving has had issues. So he says, trade me. And they did that. And off he goes, ending up in Dallas with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, okay, so first, Cleveland, then wasn't a good fit in Boston, then issues in Brooklyn, and then he ends up in Dallas when he forced a trade out of Brooklyn because he couldn't get the max extension that he wanted. So he gets to Dallas. He plays 16 games in Dallas. And I believe when he arrived there, they were the number 5 seed in the Western Conference. And by the time the season was over, they didn't even make the play-in. Him and Luka Doncic, Dallas' star player, played 16 games together, and they went 5-11. Now, why Mark Cuban made this trade in the beginning was beyond me because I don't think you have to be an NBA coach to know that wouldn't have been a good fit, right? Now, Kyrie, he put up his numbers as usual, right? He always puts up his numbers, but somehow they generally don't help winning. With Dallas, he averaged 27 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and his splits were crazy: 51% from the floor, 39% from 3, and 95% from the line, right? So he was getting busy, but again, the winning wasn't there. Now, can't blame it all on him because they traded away 3-and-D players in order to get him there. But regardless, if you're the Dallas GM, if you're Mark Cuban, you got to know that that's what we call, I was going to say addition by subtraction, but no, not really. So because the team didn't get any better when Kyrie arrived. So now you got a situation where you got a very ball dominant player in Kyrie Irving. You have another very ball dominant player in Luka Doncic. And we know Luka's not effective without the ball in his hands. He's not that guy. So when Kyrie's got the ball, he's kind of standing around waiting for his turn, and that's not a good fit. That doesn't create ball and body motion, which most coaches will tell you is the key to success, right? So then you got the other problem. Your 2 main guys, neither one defends. Neither one even attempts to defend. So if they're not even trying to defend, well, nobody else on the team is going to try because your 2 leaders aren't doing it, right? So you've got that. So again, here we go. Situation, terrible fit. Now, the season ends. Kyrie wants what? A long-term extension, as he should, right? He's an elite player in the league. an elite offensive player, but realistically, like I always talk about, defense, no matter what they say, is not a huge deal in the modern NBA. So elite offensive players are the guys who get paid for the most part, right? I guess we can kind of look at Rudy Gobert in there. He got a huge contract a couple years ago. But anyway, for the most part, offensive players are the guys who get paid. And Kyrie wanted that long-term extension. He was probably looking for a 4-year deal around that, $200 million range. But that wasn't happening. And rightfully so. It shouldn't, because what has he done to prove to you that he deserves that, right? Here was the crazy thing. I was going to do a show on this, but this happened too quickly. Kyrie re-signing with Dallas. It was rumored that he was going to go visit with the Phoenix Suns, which has Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. That would have been insane, right? Now, obviously, the Suns would have had to move heaven and earth and really play around with the numbers to try and make it fit to be able to get Kyrie there. And of course, Kyrie would have had to take less money. So that was highly unlikely that that was going to happen. Anyway, there were no real long-term offers out there for Kyrie Irving. Bill Simmons, he reported that there were like at least 3 other teams in the mix who were looking to offer Kyrie 2 years for $25 million. And why is that 2 years of $25 million? Clearly, because this is not a guy that you can count on. So do you want to give him 4 years, 200 mil? And depending on what the team was, they might not have had the money or the space under the cap to do that anyway. So here's where I get confused about the Mark Cuban thing. Why would you have given him this 3-year deal for $126 million? Who are you bidding against? You're not in a bidding war against anybody else. You don't have to outpay anyone. If there were a few other teams willing to give him 2 years at $25 million, right? If that was me and I'm the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, obviously I'm not, but if I was, I would have given him a 1-year prove-it deal for $40, maybe $45 million. Is he going to turn that down when the other teams out there are offering 2 years at $25 million? No, he would have taken that deal, right? And if he wanted the long-term deal, he would have acted right and he would have played as best he could possibly play and try to make this thing work with Luka so that he could have gotten the deal that he wanted in the long term. He would have had to prove it to me. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not that guy if I'm an owner just out here paying dudes because you're up next, or just paying dudes because that's what they want when it's against what would be beneficial to my organization. I really don't understand that. He would have had to prove it to me. So here's the other thing. Even more so than the money, right? How does this deal improve the Dallas Mavericks or get them any closer to winning a championship long term? We've seen since Kyrie left LeBron, he's not a championship caliber player. We've seen so far that as good as Luka is, he's not good enough to get them there over the hump. They really need to do a better job constructing a team that can do this. A team. We saw that a well-constructed team can win a championship. See Denver Nuggets. We just watched that happen. And now the league, with the adjustment of the collective bargaining agreement and the way the salary cap is laid out and more punitive punishments for going into the luxury tax, right? We see that what they're trying to do is stoke the fires of competition by making it much more difficult to create super teams, which I really like. But quick side note, man, doesn't that say something about the players of today, that the league has to force competition, that the players don't want to go against each other and they'd rather team up and be buddy-buddy and try to load the deck and win the easy way? That's why you look at a guy like Jokic, you look at a guy like Giannis, and you have a little more respect for the way they went about and the way their organizations went about winning their championships. But that's a different topic. Anyway, yeah, how are the Mavs any closer to winning a championship? Now we're going to see what their GM and their scouts can do in terms of how they draft players and how they put players around Kyrie and Luka that are cost effective, but can also assist in having a good fit that Jason Kidd can coach them and have them really possibly be successful in the Western Conference, which is going to be tough. This is an era where owners pander to their superstars. And I'm sure Mark Cuban talked to Luka Doncic about a future with Kyrie. But here's the question now. What happens if this doesn't work out? And it won't, because what? The past shows us that it won't. But what happens if Luka Doncic ends up not liking what's going on there and he decides that he wants out of Dallas? Now what? Luka's the future. This is a guy that most people would call a generational talent. I don't know if I go that far, but clearly he's a dominant in this era of the NBA. And If he can stay healthy, this is a guy you got for like the next 10 years getting busy. And he's a guy who may be able to lead you back to the promised land like Dirk did if you, build the right team around him. So the question becomes, if he wants out, then what do? You're willing to lose that guy for Kyrie Irving, a guy that clearly has demonstrated consistently year in, year out in the league that he can't be counted on? What sense does that make? I just don't understand this move. I just don't. Short term, fine. Like I said, 1 year prove it deal, 40, 45 million. Show me what you got. Show me what you're willing to do. Show me that you're willing to be a team player, play into the system, not cause trouble off the court, and be reliable for me, and you will get your money, right? Short term, fine. But 3 years at that price tag, nah, man, not me. If it doesn't work, now you have to choose Luka, but the contract you just gave Kyrie makes a trade more difficult. So if you're Mark Cuban, you put yourself really in a difficult spot. So what I want to know from you here is, do you think this was a smart move to re-sign Kyrie for 3 years at $126 million? Do you think that it's going to end up working out with Luka? Heck of a job here that Jason Kidd is going to have to do as head coach of the Mavs. And yeah, give me your thoughts on that. Definitely want to hear it. Leave it in the comment section. Get back with you next time. And I'm out. Peace.